Welcome to David Klein Gallery. We're thrilled with Rosalind's gorgeous show, Cloud Totems. We're so happy to be still working with Rosalind, who we first met when she came out of Cranbrook in 2015. It's a long time now. And we're so proud of her, and this show, she's just knocked it out of the park again, once again, right? And then we're so delighted that Robin K. Williams could be with us. She's the Curator of Contemporary Art at the University of Michigan Art Museum. So we're delighted to have you here, which is the first time, but we hope will be many times. All right. So they're going to have a conversation, and then we'll open for questions after. Okay. All right.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, David, for the invitation to be here. And thank you, Rosalind. It's really, truly an honor to be in conversation with you about your new exhibition. It is gorgeous.
Thanks.
And thank you, everyone, for being here. We have, I know, many thoughtful, informed, sensitive viewers in the audience, too. So at the end of the conversation, we'll leave time for some questions from you all also. But I want to start, Rosalind, with just a kind of very basic overview to kind of ground those people who might not be as familiar with your work in what we're seeing here today. So I know that you have in the space two bodies of work, both kind of enacting an overarching material logic. So can you just start by describing the materials, describing your process of working with those materials to create these works, and in just a big picture sense for the moment, your kind of big ambitions, and get as detailed as you want and can, because, you know, everyday kind of, things that seem everyday to you are like fascinating to the rest of us. So, yeah.
Well, thank you guys also for being here today, and Robin for leading this talk. Yes. So the two kind of series that you're looking at here are bodies of work I've kind of been developing over the last probably like 3 years. And they came out of my love of working with natural materials. So they're all created by hand cutting mica, which is a flaky silicate mineral, and adhering it to silk fabric. So, you know, prior to this body of work, I was working with a lot of like gilding and metal leaf, but I had always wanted to work with actual metal, a metal mirroring process. So I've worked with an Italian mirror maker, and we've developed a way to mirror the mica. So that's the first series. And then the second series is hand-cut selenite on silk, and selenite is a clear crystal. So, you know, it's a very labor-intensive process where I hand-cut individual slivers of it and adhere it to the silk fabric. And the result is a translucent, it's a minimalist object, but it's also very, you know, materially present and handmade. So those are the two series that are in the show.
And can you say just a bit about your goals for this body of work?
I think, like, for me, what interests me in art is an object that isn't static or image driven. So, like, the pieces kind of become more about like space and light and architecture, sort of like the kind of like artistic lineage that I am mining is, you know, like the light and space movement, or even the kind of like post-minimalist artists who are really interested in like a kind of materiality in the work. So, you know, they're pieces that the viewer can see themselves within, and they, you know, they drastically shift depending on the time of day or the environment they're in. And I feel like that for me is a more engaging art form than just looking at a narrative or like an image based kind of piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. When we were in here last night, the garage door was open and it was kind of like the sun was starting to set. It was a clear, bright day, a very different kind of quality of light and atmosphere than today. And you can really see that in the way that the works are responding to their environment in this space, right? So that's very lovely. Okay, so I know your parents are here today, and I had such a lovely conversation with them yesterday. But I'm not asking you this because you're here. Like, I am always very interested in hearing about an artist's trajectory in life. So, like, kind of what brought you to be able to create these works, both technically and conceptually. So I want to just start by asking you a little bit about that, and I know that nature is very important to you and the experience of being in nature, and that goes back to your childhood. Can you just kind of describe a little bit about that, or anything that you think was really important to you from your foundational kind of early life experience that you bring forward?
Yeah, so thanks to my amazing parents for being so supportive of me my whole life as an artist. I basically grew up spending the summers on this lake, and my dad's a naturalist and a writer, and I think we've just basically like we're outdoors all the time in this certain environment, whether it was like playing with rocks, playing in the dirt, playing in the water, so there was kind of it was a very special place, and it still is. And then I think that just kind of subconsciously filters into the work. And also, like, then going from that type of environment to moving to New York 10 years ago, like, it's such a gritty urban environment that there's kind of like a duality between like those influences of like how these like surfaces respond to like what like natural forces or man-made forces, interventions. So I think that's kind of the sort of like inspirational like basis behind my work. And now I'm working between upstate New York and New York City. So there's two environments, and they drastically impact the kind of like approach to like how I'm working. Just going from like this like sensorial like assault of like the city to then just like being in a place where there's like the only thing you hear is nature. There's like no other people around. It's like an interesting way to work. And I think those early childhood experiences are kind of like they were kind of crucial to like how this interest in like the stone or like the phenomenological experience of just being in nature in the kind of like present moment.
I love also how that is so clearly manifested in the works themselves. I think that, it oftentimes the experience of viewing art is deeply enriched by hearing the artist's ideas and backstories. But yet with your work at the same time, I feel like it's rare, actually, that all of those ideas are so clearly manifested in the work in a way that is like richly material and embodied. And like, for example, I see when you're talking about like the environment of the lake, like looking at a work like this, it looks like the surface of the lake. And it also looks like the kind of like muddy, craggy land around the lake at the same time that it might look like a fractured concrete. And, the hanging curtains behind us might look like clouds on a sunny day kind of being refracted through the clouds at golden hour, but it could also be the same kind of light quality refracted through a puddle of oil in a parking lot, right?
Yeah. No, that's I think you're like totally spot on. And the title Cloud Totems was kind of taken from these two hanging panels that you see in the gallery. And those were from a body of work I made last year, which was the first time I had the opportunity to take the pieces off the frame, off the wall. And it kind of opened up I started to view these like tapestries as, I call them cloud totems, because the form evokes a kind of weather system, but they're also, you know, the tall vertical format of them has this kind of totemic quality. And I think it also, the relationship of the viewer, they kind of are bodily in that sense, like both in the format or the dimension and the fact that you can physically like see yourself in the work.
And also on the back side, like if you walk around in the back, it looks like skin.
Yeah,
it has
exactly.
like a skin-like texture, right?
Yeah, I kind of this work actually began when I was at Cranbrook, where I was trying to figure out like a type of how to make abstract painting that still talked about the body and like what kind of specific body that was, like specifically like a feminized body. And so that's where the interest in like the silk fabric or like the sequin fabric was like, it kind of like came into the work from that angle. And sorry, I kind of got off.
No, it's okay, actually, that you're leading towards something that I wanted to ask you about next
Yeah.
also, so I can, kind of the other aspect of your life trajectory is the art part of that. And I know that you started out in drawing and painting.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you had told me before that then you went to Cranbrook with this in a kind of what you called a moment of crisis.
Yeah,
where
for
you
sure.
were really like not so much feeling fulfilled by image making in the same way. And you wanted to explore kind of radically new ways of making art. So you invested in material explorations and tried out installation based practices. So yeah, I guess I'm curious to explore that more, like how it is that you went from a kind of like image-based form to one that's really interrogating these kind of structures and what an image even is and can be, in the way that these images are highly unstable and reactive, and they can appear and dissolve, and they are also integrated with the structures. So like, coming from a background in painting and then moving in a direction that is really a hybrid of sculpture and painting and installation. So that wasn't really a question. I don't know if you want to address anything like that.
No, I think it's interesting because I do really love it. I tried and failed to be an installation artist in grad school, and like it was just going through those like 2 years of like really experimental work and then kind of like bringing it back to more of like a wall-based practice was kind of like the result of that. But now I'm kind of, it's interesting. I never feel like being an artist is linear. I always feel like it's circular. And so ideas that you might have had an idea 10 years ago, somehow 10 years later, you're like, oh my God, this thing I was thinking about years ago is somehow in this work now, right? And I feel that happening again. It's interesting to come back to have this show at this moment, because it was like essentially like 11 years ago that I graduated from Cranbrook, and then circling back to this space with this work in this moment is very interesting. In the sense that I feel like my practice is going back to a more installation-based manifestation. So like kind of, you know, doing the hanging tapestries has kind of opened up a new sort of avenue, spatially based avenue, that I think I'm really excited to like explore that further. And, you know, like a lot of the artists that I love, like, are like, you know, for example, like Robert Smithson, like Mary Webster, like these like kind of landscape artists, you know, that did these like big, ambitious kind of like Dia Beacon level. Delcy Morelos is another great artist. These big kind of earth-based works. I think that would be like my dream as an artist, to do something like that, and kind of finding, you know, it's a challenge because if you live in New York, it's like you're spatially constrained. You know, it's a very expensive city, so it's like figuring out how to do those kind of projects is kind of like my like long-term goal.
Yeah. when you're kind of in some of the references that you just named, like Robert Smithson, Mary Corse, I think another reference that you've mentioned before. Because so to share, like before doing your MFA at Cranbrook, you also did a undergraduate degree at Indiana University, studying both studio art and art history.
Yeah.
And I also think that that's really both evident and important in your work.
Yeah.
And in a way that, like, you know, I wish all young artists should interrogate art history very roundly and aggressively in their curiosity, because I think it really produces a very richly developed practice. And so, but I want to kind of pause there on the kind of background of minimalism and post-minimalism, because that's also a kind of touchstone that you and I both share from different ways, mine being academic. And I think that there are many different ways that we could situate your work in relationship to that lineage that help us to better understand our present moment as well, because those artists were reacting to their moment in time just the same. So, you know, the land artists that you mentioned, like Smithson, working with earth and with organic materials like you're doing, but also something that we kind of skimmed over before, but I think is really important, is unpacking what you've also called elsewhere the like non-neutral materials that you're using that signify a certain kind of feminized body, like the sequins, for example, or silk.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a really interesting progression, like, you know, I don't think progression is not quite the right word, but transmutation of that kind of history. So I'm curious how you think about the relationship of your work to that kind of practice in that moment of the 60s and 70s.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm like, I feel like are you like alluding to like what was happening in like the larger political or social sphere of the time, or?
In part, I guess I'm alluding to like the kind of, on the surface, minimalism was a really male-dominated
for sure
scene where artists like, you know, Donald Judd and Smithson and these, well, Judd and Flavin and those were like really focused on making manufactured objects out of hard materials, right? And then like there was the feminist movement rising alongside that, right, which was really interested in different kinds of materiality, but they touched. They were integrated, but like in art history, they are kind of not.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So like the non-neutrality piece
for
of
sure.
it.
And I think, I mean, for me, it's like I'm making like a monochromatic piece, but it's like everything it's super tactile. Like it's like super, the hand is in it. Like there's nothing, almost no, even the mirroring process is like a pre-industrial mirror making process. So like it's like a handmade, you're essentially like you pour a layer of silver onto the surface and it like deposits onto it. But yeah, for me, I would say like kind of I just think the handmade is like going to become such an interesting and important thing culturally, especially because we're in this moment of like, we're kind of living in a disembodied moment where, you know, so many, we're just like glued to our phones, glued to the screen, glued to technology, like the way you can't even take an image as reality anymore because of AI, and like like fake news and stuff like that. Like, so it's like, so for me, like in terms of, I think all art is inherently political, whether or not it's like a subtext in the work or
an action through the work.
Yeah, and so I think for me, like the physicality of the work itself is the political act, as a counterpoint to like a more disembodied reality that we're living in. Does that make sense? That was a really roundabout.
No,
like,
it makes absolute sense to me.
Yeah.
The investment that you have in making,
well, and like AI, like the fact that it could somehow take over like a person's job, or like, you know, take over these whole fields of like economies or, you know, systems. And this is like, there's absolutely no way like
That it
it's
could
going to be like
done.
untouched by
Yeah.
kind of, you know, it's like anti-technology almost. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah, absolutely. It does to me. And I have a reflection on this actually that I was thinking about in relationship to another aspect of art from that time, the 60s, 70s moment, which is video.
Oh yeah,
And
interesting.
and specifically the kind of evolution of the technology of the mirror and the mirror as a technology and a metaphor.
Yeah.
Because in around 1970, the new technology that artists were embracing was video, which became like on the commercial market in the 60s, but really became integrated in art practice around 1970. And it's like hard for us to capture now that novelty because now it's ever present, but the novelty of being able to see and interact with your self-image displaced from your body in real time. And so the mirror became, for many artists and critics, the kind of framework. And then alongside that, there was a metaphor of narcissism. And, the art historian, very influential art historian and critic Rosalind Krauss, described the medium of video as narcissism, but it wasn't about a kind of simple vanity that we think about that term commonly. She was really hearkening back to the like Freudian psychology kind of explanation of that, being that it's a circular structure. Like,
oh, interesting.
Yeah. So like the investment of like the ego energy gets invested into the object, and it dissolves the like distinction between the subject and the object, because it becomes a kind of like self-perpetuating loop, or like a kind of being caught in a kind of intra-subjectivity. But anyway, I was thinking about that in relationship to just what you were talking about, the moment that we're in with our technological moment with AI and social media kind of constantly feeding us back to ourselves.
Yeah.
Like we are in that moment of feedback where we're trapped in our own, this kind of like attention being sucked into this economy in which our own self-images, our preferences, and our kind of predicted reactions are fed back to us in this kind of looping structure. And so, I think that like your work is doing something so interesting and important against that background that's really very layered in that it's material and perceptual, and also at the same time and through the same means, conceptual, psychological, and spiritual.
Yeah.
Right? It's a resistance to that, but it also physically enacts that because...
Yeah, it's true. It does, because of the reflection.
Because it's not a direct reflection.
Yeah.
It reflects light, but also it primarily diffracts the light, right? And so it turns us back by not giving us the expectation of a mirror reflection.
Yeah.
It's turning us back onto the environment and the kind of experience of being an embodied person in space and with other people.
Yeah. That's like such an articulate way of essentially like my goal, if there was a goal as an artist, for people to get from the work, like every single day I'm on the subway, you just look up and people are just looking at their phones, and they're not even looking, you're not even like aware of your surrounding environment. Right. So like, I think it's really important to have these spaces and, objects that create that opportunity. That might be a really grandiose kind of notion, but I don't know.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah. So and I also just, I just like making my work too. It's just a very like, there's like, in talking about like the feminist theory and feminism, there's like this real history of like labor, and like female labor specifically. So like that totally factors into like the process of these pieces. Like they're physically like painful to make. Like they're, like I'm cutting each thing, like it's like a sharp object, but it becomes something really beautiful, like when you assemble it.
For me, in thinking about that history, it also, the works evoke like the goddess. Like, in this kind of spirituality that is invested in immanence in nature, in being,
Yeah.
right? And the kind of like, I'm interested, there are a lot of artists that I've been seeing that are kind of drawing really compelling kind of metaphors between the self and human life and kind of like the geological life and death cycle of the earth.
Yeah.
And there's a kind of empathy there.
Of course. And like, we're definitely living through this kind of, not to get too dark, but like ecological crisis, you know, like it's like a mass extinction event, but we're still somehow, it's just happening in real time around us, you know? So, and I'm very aware that like, you know, the materials I'm using are actually like they're natural resources too, which is like, could be problematic, you know, because it's like you're taking it from the earth and you're kind of in this real primordial way, like kind of like for this, you know, high aesthetic kind of beautiful thing, art object. But it's a very, you know, it's like they come, you know, it's like mined materials, and even silver itself, like is like as a metal, you know, it all comes from the ground, you know, and it represents kind of like the mirror itself is like this incredible like alchemy of like turning. You're essentially turning a metal into liquid, which is this is another thing like I think about like a lot in the work of like a slippage of materiality. So like something looks like a solid or something that is a solid, but might look like atmosphere or like something liquid. Like even like the selenite pieces, like they look like a cracked, like almost like ice formation. Like, so I'm kind of interested in how those materials can be like manipulated and subverted from their like inherent nature.
I love it. Okay. So let's just pause and see if anyone else has questions or comments that they'd like to offer.
Where do you get your materials?
It's been where do you get the materials? It's been a really interesting journey this year. I'm so glad you asked that, Clay. Because of all the geopolitical stuff happening in the world, they come from various places. So like the mica comes from India. I think the selenite comes from China, and the silver, I don't know where the silver comes from, but because of all of the global, you know, geopolitical things happening, I've had the problem solving of sourcing this amount of mineral, like a mineral is a crazy challenge actually. Like, and I used to be able to get it from, like I have several like suppliers I work with, and they're struggling to like get it. So it's been like, I'm like, how do I get like 200 pounds of selenite over from China or like hundreds of pounds of mica from India? It's like a crazy situation, but it's, you know, I'm like, how did I end up like, this is my job, but I'm like, I don't know. I kind of love it. It's like a kind of like insane logistical problem to solve. So yeah, so the minerals come from mostly like Asia, and the mirror maker, I work with a mirror maker in New York that was another hard, like figuring out how to create a mirror in like a totally non-traditional way was like, there was a lot of like failure, but this guy in Queens, like we've been working together for like 3 years to like develop the technique.
How did you find him?
Like it was just like research, you know, like I was like, where is a mirror maker? Like, you know, it's such a niche thing that there's almost like, it's almost like only 1 or 2 people in the country. I think he might be one of the only people to do it. And it's like, you know, he took over this business from this like old Italian man. Like it's been like in business for like the 50s. And it's kind of this almost like hidden knowledge, you know, like, so I feel really lucky that he was just like willing to work with me on that, because it's such a like weird thing to be like, go to some guy in Queens and be like, can you just do this and this, you know, figure out how to make it. So I feel really lucky that, you know, I work with him really closely, and I have another fabricator that makes my frames, so the pieces that are on the that are just the cut selenite, cut stone, are completely, they're translucent paintings, which was another thing where I was like, wouldn't it be so cool to make like a translucent painting? Like even the frame itself is translucent.
Mm-hmm.
So like figuring out how to make a clear frame was a challenge too. And I have a fabricator in New York that I also work with really closely who does all those frames. So that's probably the only part of the process has a kind of technological component, because it's like CNC'd acrylic. So it's like cut with a machine. But that's kind of the only thing. Everything else is like hand done, you know? Yes.
Well, you answered my first few questions, which was about sourcing and everything with the mirror. I'm curious what adhesives you're using, and if you have any kind of top coating on the whole.
The silver is sprayed with like a water-based resin, because otherwise it's like very fragile. It's not like it will like fall apart, but like it's, you know, it's like a metal, like silver. That's part of the piece. Like there will be a patina that develops, but it's going to be like it's going to be like a long time, you know. But it's, you know, you think of metal as like a kind of stable thing, and it's changeable, but I kind of love that about it, you know. It's it ages, it like changes over time. And oh yeah, the adhesive is just like an acrylic adhesive, just like a clear, you know, acrylic, like essentially like glue. Yeah.
I really enjoy the Night of Space.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I think I started doing that about like a year or two ago, and I think it's just a really nice way to like balance, you know, the heaviness of the kind of materials with like this. The silk is like this like Japanese organza that's like very, you know, it's very lightweight, but it's like very strong as a fabric. So it's like an amazing fabric. So it's just like the fact that you can see it, I really like it too. And then these frames they're actually aluminum, but they're like birch veneer. So like they're like, the frame is super lightweight, but it doesn't have any cross braces. It's like super solid. And then it just has like a thin veneer of birch over it, just because the wood looks really nice, you know. So that's, yeah. Yes.
I have a process question. So, are you working, particularly about these, are you working on the fact that the silk is hanging? Because it seems like you pour some of this, right?
Yeah.
On the floor?
All of my work I make flat on the floor. Yeah. So like these pieces I stretch the fabric, and then I do like the compositional like drawing, and I seal, you know, I kind of like mask off the areas of the silk that are the negative space. And then I make the piece on the areas that are like sealed with the acrylic, if that makes sense.
Do you work on more than one piece at a time?
Yeah, I do. Like this was probably like, I made 17 pieces in 12 weeks this year. So and they're not like small pieces. Like one was for a project in here, and the other was a big, I did like a big commission for like a private client in Dallas, and it was the largest like cut selenite piece. It was like a 7 by 7 foot painting. So I had to I have people helping me occasionally, not like full time, but we had to develop a system where there was like a plank, like a wood scaffolding kind of over the painting, so I could reach the center of it. And it's really physical work. Like I literally like, it's almost like a giant puzzle where I'm literally like physically placing one piece of selenite next to another one and like fitting it all together flat on the ground, and then it dries, you know, over like quite a long time. But yeah, this was a really busy winter. It got me through the winter, which was a tough winter. But yeah, I'm really, really happy with how the show and the installation turned out. Yes. Thank you.
When I look at this, give me feedback of, I see Richard Serra, who I saw it was very, do you see some resemblance?
Wait, sorry, a resemblance?
Richard Serra.
Richard Serra.
Oh yeah, I could kind of see that, like in terms of the metal quality, or
About filling the space with the same color.
yeah, I can see that. I mean, that's an honor to be compared to Richard Serra. I mean, he's an amazing artist. Yeah, it would be interesting to kind of. I don't know if you guys have been to Dia Beacon, but like you can walk inside those like spiral Serra sculptures, and they always like. It would be interesting to kind of create a sort of like space like that where you feel kind of precarious in those sculptures, you know, like you're constrained in them, you know, they're kind of like, it feels a little precarious. I don't know.
Slightly threatening.
Yeah, no, for sure.
He also has at Dia the oil stick drawings, you know, like two-dimensional on the wall in black oil stick, and you know, there is a kind of similar. I mean, it's not similar, but there's a kind of textural way in which like the building and building and building and building.
I kind of think about. I mean, these pieces are very beautiful, but they're also kind of degraded simultaneously. They have a grittiness to them, which is important. You know, it's like, I think having that duality in tandem is like really, I wouldn't just want to make like a perfect object, you know, like a design object or a perfect object. It needs to have some kind of like, I also think I think for me, it's like living in New York and you're just like exposed to so much like wear on everything. It like kind of,
it's like the fragility and the decay and the sublime beauty at the same time. And that's kind of like what I had in mind before when I was talking about this sort of like way in which the work can also help us reflect on ecology, really. Yeah. Any other questions?
I think it's really interesting how with this piece, the mirror becomes the negative, like the void over here.
Yeah, I do these flatter areas are pores of acrylic, so it's like many layers of poured acrylic, and it becomes like it's super flat, but it's like a pool, and it is the negative space. I'm glad this was the first circular mirrored work I've ever made, and I feel like it also combined the sequin fabric that I have worked with a lot in the past. And I'm really happy. I didn't know it was a really experimental piece. It could have like not worked. And I'm really happy it did work.
Yeah, the tandem form is very successful.
Soak underneath the mirror?
There like these kind of like areas. It's kind of more of like a collaged fabric. Because it's essentially just adhered in a couple places to the.
I keep reading that piece as like a topographical map.
Yeah, it definitely has that.
This is the desert.
It definitely has like a map-like quality to it. I love circular paintings. I'm like, Tondos, they always do kind of like reference, or even, you know, this piece was titled Nocturne 1 after Artemis, and it was like, you know, the Artemis mission had just happened, and I just thought it was such an incredible, like the footage that NASA published of the moon, and like, it was just such an amazing moment too, because there's so much terrible stuff happening that we're hearing about all the time. And then you have this incredible, like all of those, listening to those astronauts talk about the mission was like, about like our shared humanity. And it was just like this insane, beautiful thing. And I'm like, this is what we need in this moment, you know, like not listening to all this other, you know, stuff. I found it was a really moving thing to like, and the fact that they like streamed it, that everyone could like be there with them, it was just incredible. You know, the dark side of the moon, you know, those images were just unreal, you know. So that's kind of what I was thinking. That kind of happened when I was like, just as I was finishing this piece. Yeah, I mean, I sort of worked on these all simultaneously, but yeah, this was kind of like the most recent piece. Yeah, so the cloud totems were essentially like that. title was like a reference to the tapestry pieces, and that's kind of how I viewed them, as like these, they're, you know, the forms are like a weather pattern or like a cloud-like pattern, and I think of a totem as this kind of like body, like vertical body kind of. So that's where the combination or that title came from.
They're gorgeous.
Thank you.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you, Robin. Great. I love these cute little mics. I know, they're like a little animal.